Realty. Welcome to another segment we're calling Get Real, Straight Talk on Real Estate. Today what I want to talk about is foreclosures. Now before I get started, I should mention this is something that's just part of the reality of the economic landscape today. But I do want to mention that mainly we're going to be talking about bank-owned properties, and you need to realize that at this point the damage really has been done. The person was late on payments. The property's already been foreclosed on, so I don't want you to get the feeling that we're talking about properties and kicking people out of their homes. Unfortunately, the reality is, at this stage in the process, they've already lost that battle, and they're not getting back into the house. It's already owned by the bank. So let me start by talking about the terms to clarify some things. A lot of people call our office and they ask about foreclosures. And foreclosure is really a process. The foreclosure process is how banks take over properties from people that are not paying their loan. So the property goes to auction. And now a lot of people think, oh great, it's at auction. This is awesome. I'm gonna go and buy this property for pennies on the dollar. That's not the reality of what happens at these auctions. What happens at the auction is that the bank will typically put in the highest bid and buy the property because they don't want to sell the property for pennies on the dollar. They know that they can list it and market it properly as a bank-owned property and get more money. So the bank is going to actually, in most cases, buy the property. At that point, it becomes an REO, which stands for real estate owned. So really what I'm talking about today mainly is REO properties, real estate owned. Now the first question is, where do you find REO properties? The answer is that they are listed in the MLS system. So in Greater Boston, all agents have access to the multiple listing service, MLS, and those properties are all listed in MLS, so they're pretty easy to find. That's not the tough part. The other question is, what should you be looking for? And before I answer that question, I should mention that I always recommend that you work with a real estate agent, someone who's a professional, who understands the REO process. So, if you call up an office and you say, hey, I'm kind of interested in REO properties, what can you tell me about REOs in your area? And the agent says, REO what? If they're not familiar with these terms, you need to find an agent who is. So that's the first recommendation, is find an agent who's familiar with the REO process that can help you throughout this process. Now they go out, they'll help you find a place. You want to be aware of some things about REOs. They're typically distressed properties. Sometimes there's been a flood there because they tried to turn on the water at some point and the place got flooded. Sometimes the utilities are all turned off. Sometimes they can't be turned on. Sometimes someone has come and clipped out all the copper in the building and they can't turn the utilities on, so you need to be aware of that. But as far as what to look for in an REO property, your agent can help you strategize and figure out what properties you should focus on. So at this point, you go out, you find a property that you like, you want to make an offer on it. I want to explain the difference between the REO process for purchasing and the regular purchase process that you find with most other properties. So first I'll talk about the regular purchase. This is just a regular, plain vanilla purchase. So in a regular purchase, you make an offer. There's a $1,000 binder to bind the offer, and the offer is good for 24 hours. And what happens in a regular purchase is that assuming you reach agreement with the seller, they actually sign the offer. I mean, wouldn't that be nice? They sign the offer, and then 7 days later you have an inspection. And if things look okay, maybe you go ahead, maybe you don't, depending on what you find. And 2 weeks later you sign a purchase and sale, and there's usually a pretty sizable deposit at the purchase and sale. After the purchase and sale, they send an appraiser to the property, your bank will, to make sure that you haven't overpaid. If you in fact have not overpaid, you will get a commitment letter from the bank, and at that point you're just waiting for things to go through and getting to the official date that you set for your closing. Pretty straightforward, but let me show you how this changes when you're dealing with an REO property. So the first thing to realize about an REO property is you're dealing with a bank. So things are not going to happen on your timeline. You can't expect them to turn around on a dime and get you responses quickly. They're sending it off somewhere. Sometimes the bank actually has to, or the asset management company that's handling the property, they have to call up some guy in Rhodesia who owns the loan that was originally there and who now has part title to the property or some weird thing. So they need to get answers from various people. It's not an overnight thing. But I found that they can be relatively quick, within 2 or 3 days. Not 24 hours though. They're not going to get back to you in 24 hours. Now here's the other thing. Even if they accept your offer, they're not actually going to sign it. This is something that surprises and shocks a lot of people. They will not sign your offer. Instead, what they're going to do is give you a purchase and sale. So they're asking you to sign this really big, cumbersome document within about 48 hours of accepting, quote unquote, your offer, which a lot of people find unsettling, but that's just the way they do it. And by the way, this purchase and sale cannot be negotiated. They're not going to change anything in this document for your sake or for your attorney's sake. It's really just a boilerplate document that they use all around the country, and they want you to sign it as is. Now, the good news about the purchase and sale is that the inspection contingency is still in there. So you're not stuck wondering whether or not you're going to be able to do an inspection and whether you're going to get your money back if the inspection doesn't go well. The inspection contingency is in the document. The only difference is you're signing it first. The other good news is that after your inspection is when you're going to give them the balance of your deposit. So you're not giving them a huge deposit up front. Typically, you're going to sign the purchase sale, do the inspection, and then give them some more money for earnest money. Now, at this point, things start to look fairly normal. I guess the only difference that I would caution you on is financing can be a little bit more difficult with an REO. Let's say you can't turn the utilities on. The appraiser may have issues with appraising the property without the utilities turned on. The appraisal may have issues with the condition of the property, so you want to keep that in mind. Some REO properties can be very difficult to finance, and this is why a lot of banks are really looking for cash buyers in these cases. But other than that, the process is fairly smooth. Again, just watch out for delays. You might find that 2 days before closing, the bank needs to review something and they haven't gotten approval on something, and that can take some additional time. So make sure that you build into your process that delays are definitely going to happen with an REO property. That wraps it up for today. Next time I will be talking about short sales, so please join me for that.